Hi folks, ThriceRisen here with a video that was recommended by someone in a brief poll that I made on social media talking about Manabases. And the approach I'm going to take with this video is talking about scaling Manabases. You know, starting with like the most basic to something more expensive, something more intricate, something more fine-tuned. So obviously, every deck in Magic begins with the mana base. If you don't have mana, you can't cast spells. There's a large debate as to whether card draw or mana is the better thing, and I think it just... I'm not going to delve into that debate, but the point of that statement is that mana is either the most important thing or the second most important thing in Magic, depending upon the argument. It's in the top two, or maybe tied for first. Anyways, so basic lands. Most decks start with basic land. I run a decent number of basics. Some people in their commander decks like to run fewer basics and more advanced technical things. I favor consistency in my mana base. I like the lands to behave the same. They either tap for mana or they tap for some kind of an effect. I don't have to keep track of, okay, pay this amount and then filter it into this. I'm not a huge fan of filter lands, so I'm not really going to address them in this video because this video is largely going to be using one of my decks as my personal preference on how to scale a mana base. So you have basic lands, and even in basic lands there are scaling. You could get just a plain basic that you pull out of a pack. You could get a full art basic. You could get the full art borderless basic from the recent Unstable. This isn't even from this deck, so otherwise leave. Get out of here. So you have basic lands, okay, and you can do all kinds of things with just basic lands, and these are technically basic. It says it right there, even though they're covered in snow. It's wintertime, so it's appropriate. So these are the basic lands for one of my decks. I like to keep them all really nice and pretty because it's the deck I enjoy playing the most. So let's go beyond basics. Then we're talking most immediately about dual colored lands. And there are many flavors of those. You have lands that just come in tapped, and they tap for one or the other. There are many variations of these. There's the Guild Gates, there's these. Some of them tap and give you some kind of benefit. You know, this enters tapped, but you get to scry one, so benefit. Some of them, there's a lot that gain you a life. And then there's some that enter tapped unless there's some kind of condition. So this enters tapped unless you control 2 or fewer other lands. So right here you see 3 different things that enter tapped, maybe, and either just do that and you have to handle it, or they at least give you some benefit for your trouble. But after that, then you start getting into dual lands. Then you start getting into dual lands. See, this enters tapped, period, but you can cycle it. Okay, so there's some benefit there. Then you get into these, which have that conditional tapping ability. Then you start getting into the expensive ones. So you have these there, these there. So then you get into the expensive ones, the shock lands. These are slightly more expensive. Again, sliding along that scale. So they enter tapped unless you pay 2 life. So these they don't have any other condition to make or to meet. So let's get the actual direct comparison. So this one, it'll enter untapped if you meet a certain condition. This one, you just have to pay the price, namely 2 life. So then you have access to fast land. And of course, the next step up from this are the dual colored lands that enter untapped, namely the original duals. And the benefit of having all of these quote-unquote dual type lands is that you can, anything that says find an island, as long as it doesn't say basic, can go get this watery grave. What are we talking about? We are talking about fetch lands, but we'll get to that in a second. Because when you have multiple colors in your deck, you want to try to fix those colors. You want to try to get them into play quickly. Nothing beats the good old-fashioned Evolving Wilds or Terramorphic Expanse. These are good in any deck of any color. Maybe even decks that only run one color, just to thin the deck out a little bit. Yeah, statistically it's not a lot, but you never know. Then you get access to fancier things like Crows and Birds. This is the only land of its kind. It can go get a forest and a plains and put them into play tapped, and you sacrifice it. But there are other things like this. You have the panoramas from the Alara block. The Esper panorama, Jund panorama, and so on, that can go get basics of certain kinds. And this is like an ascended version of it. But then, of course, you get into the actual fetch lands. Pay a life, go get a forest or a plains. So in the case of this one, using the Dimir as the example, Anyway, you can get this Watery Grave, you can get this Sunken Hollow, or you can get this Fetid Pools, all off of this Polluted Delta. And usually, if I don't need it untapped right away, I'll get the Fetid Pools. Or maybe the Sunken Hollow if I don't meet the requirements, or the Watery Grave. But this can go get any of these lands and fix my colors. It could also go get this, because it has blue in it. Or it can get this, because it has black in it. So this one Polluted Delta can get any of my other colors. So, superior fixing. Now, why bother with fixing when you can just have all your colors right away? There are a number of lands that do this. A lot of them you have to pay life or take damage to do it, or maybe your opponents get some benefit. But there's a lot of things that can tap for multiple or any color of your commander's identity, or functionally any color. Now, talking about expensive mana fixing, because the one thing that's better than having the right colors of mana is having a lot of those colors of mana. So you combine Urborg and Cabal Coffers. This is a combo for you people to watch out for. Is it turns all lands into swamps. That's not a huge deal, because it doesn't, turn them off like a Blood Moon. But this says I get to tap for a black equal to each swamp I have. So this and this basically doubles my land, functionally. Then you get into utility lands. Reliquary Tower, no maximum hand size, another very common card you'll see in Commander. Mystifying Maze, and its more expensive cousin, Maze of Ith, to stop combat steps. Boseiju, to enable a spell to go off regardless of counter magic, unless they can remove it from the stack. So, Manabases can have a lot of utility lands, they can have a lot of basics, they can have a lot of mana fixing and fetching and duels. But you also want to consider not just getting more land into play, but accelerating the game plan via things like mana rocks. So this is a very common one, Commander Sphere, because it taps for all the colors you'll ever need in your Commander deck, and you can crack it to draw a card. Now, this is very common. Let's look at some that I think should be more common. Well, first we have Der Sonnenringe, erhöhe deinen Marwert zwei verblose Mana. Viele diese Eigenschaft wie einen... Anyway, German, it's a Soul Ring. This shows up in most Commander decks. But this doesn't. I think it should show up more often. Wayfarer's Bauble. 1, so you could play this on turn 1, land, tap, Wayfarer's Bauble. Turn 2, untap, second land, tap, crack it, go get a third color. So if I have this forest and this plains on turn 1, play this, turn 2, play this, crack this, I can go get a swamp or an island. I can get 3 of my colors by the end of turn 2. That's really good. I'm also a mana ahead. Or if I have this, I can go turn 1, land, turn 2 this, play this, turn 3, crack this, go get all 4 of my colors. Good to go. Or if I have cards that cost 2 of a certain color, I can get it right away. I used to play these cards, and then I cut them out because I either got rid of them or I just wanted to play other things, and then I noticed that my decks were like a turn or a turn behind other people. They weren't necessarily playing these cards, but I noticed that there was a decrease in speed over time, and I said, why is that? I need to speed up my mana acceleration. And so I got these, and it made a big difference. Then you get another card, which I think should be in a lot of commander decks. If you have a specific land that you really like having, this card is great for that. Even if you only go get a command tower, super fixing off of this, because these can only get basic lands. The fetch lands can only get dual lands. This can go get your command tower. So if you're in a deck that runs 3 or more colors, an expedition map might be an excellent choice. Then we have a Thought Vessel. It's cheap, it makes some mana. It's kind of like an anti-Soul Ring, but I have no maximum hand size. That's neat. And then of course you get into more high-end, wordy, competitive things like Mana Vault and Mana Crypt, which I don't remember those, that are used to just rapidly accelerate your mana. You want a lot of mana really fast. You see cards like this, you could expect someone might be probably racing on some kind of combo deck, because they're trying to outrace everyone before they can get their threats and answers situated. So this is basically the mana base of my Thracios and Tymna commander deck. The exception being is you also have spells. This is what I would call kind of a big ramp spell. 4 mana, big political play, but why wait till turn 4? You shouldn't be waiting till turn 4 if you're concerned about fixing your mana. You have things like Cultivate. Okay, that's on turn 3. You get 2 basic lands, one goes in tapped, the other goes into your hand, so you fix colors. Turn 3, Kodama's Reach, it's the same. It's the same thing. But then why not go on turn 2, Sylvan Scrying? Go get that command tower. Get it. But why not go get mana of the color that you need? And it doesn't say basic. There's no basic on this card. Nothing there. So I can go get my fancy dual lands and ratchet them into play. Tapped, but they're there. Nature's Lore. Go get a forest. Again, no basic. No basic. Just forest. This is great. Then you have stuff that's really fast. Turn 1 of either white or green. Search your library for a forest or plains card, reveal it, put it into your hand. Yes, to your hand, but it fixes it, and it's forest or plains, so I can go get 2 colors. Or I could get access to any set of colors in my deck with this card. Then you have Tithe. This card's great. Search your library for a plains card. If you control fewer lands than target opponent, you may search your library for an additional plains card. Reveal those cards to all players and put them into your hand. Shuffle your library afterwards. This is an amazing card in Commander, and I'm amazed more white-colored Commander players don't play this card. You know why? Because it costs 1 white, and it's an instant. So if you're not going first, this is an automatic extra 2 land in your hand. You like land tax? Well, here's kind of a one-off land tax on a spell. So, phenomenal, and a lot harder to answer than a land tax. So, this card is great, and they're not that expensive. I think it was like maybe $3-4 or something like that. I could be horribly wrong on that by the time you're watching this video. I could be horribly wrong at the time that I'm recording this video, but I remember it wasn't. I didn't break the bank to get it. So this is the mana base. Yes. This is the mana base for what I would consider a highly tuned deck, and I hope that this maybe gave you some insights into how to make your mana best. Your mana best. Make your mana the best that it can be, and also make your mana base faster, is what I was trying to say. So cheap cards like this can go in any deck. Commander Sphere, Wayfarer's Bauble, Armillary Sphere, Thought Vessel, Soul Ring, of course. And then you have things like Solemn Simulacrum. You have things like Wood Elves or Sakura Tribe Elder. Things that you can get out early so that you can get your threats faster. I'm a huge proponent of ramp. Anyone who's played with me knows that my decks do basically 3 things. They ramp, they tutor, and they combo. That's who I am. Hi, I'm a Johnny. Not a Johnny the Planeswalker. I am a Johnny combo player. My name isn't actually Johnny, but anyway, I like combos. I like assembling Rube Goldbergian things like this. You should be afraid of this card. This is a dangerous card. free information. Probably lose a few games because of that, but many of you probably already knew this. But be afraid of the Salt Monolith. Be scared of it. Alright, well that's all the time I have for right now. This is ThriceRisen talking about scaling your mana base, and I hope you enjoyed the video, and never stop learning, love one another, pursue your passions, all that good jazz, and I'll talk to you next time.